Hitomi is a young girl boss who only just started to build her empire. Amano is the handsome star of the track team and the only man Hitomi has eyes for. She's pretty athletic herself and also fairly popular, mostly among the girls because she's got a knack for telling fortunes. The only problem is that she's a little too shy to make any progress on the love quest. But once her friend informs her Amano is leaving the country to study abroad, she informs him she wants to be one of those broads. If she can sprint 100 meters in 13 seconds or less, Amano gets to be her first kiss. He accepts her offer. That night, Hitomi dashes towards her darling with everything she's got. But then a blinding light appears out of nowhere, and out of it pops a weird guy in armor, and also a dragon. There's a bit of a fight, a few close calls, and a little trauma for all parties involved. But ultimately, this strange fighter is victorious. But then the light appears out of nowhere once again and transports both him and Hitomi to a fantastical new world, filled with beastmen, dragons, and steampunk mechas. You two could also be transported to a fantastical new world thanks to this video's sponsor, Sakuraco and Tokyo Treat. The lads from the land of the rising sun sent me an elegant-looking box filled with the taste of Japan, all from the comfort of my home. Which is very convenient for me because I do not go outside. Sakuraco is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box. Each month you get a box filled with 20 traditional, authentic, artisan Japanese snacks. You also get some Japanese teas and some special Japanese tableware. They even support local Japanese snack makers. Very cool. Each month follows a theme. This month's theme is Autumn Moon Festival, a celebration of Tsukimi, the Japanese tradition of viewing and embracing the serene beauty of the autumn moon. Which is why the snacks this go around include chestnut dorayaki, lemon baked chocolate, kodaimai senbei, black sesame miso arare, usagi pon senbei, and usagi hozoi. Whimsical little creatures, they're rabbits made of a marshmallow-like Japanese treat. Vegetarian friendly, by the way, highly recommend. There's more stuff too, but my favorite was probably the custard taiyaki. I love those little banana fish. Scarf the whole thing down in 3 seconds flat like a real American patriot. The second best was the chestnut dorayaki. It was like a pancake sandwich, super tasty. Also the sweet potato. I didn't realize I like sweet potato, but now I guess I do. Pretty much everything in this box was something I'd never had before, and now want more of. The box also comes with a booklet which explains all the particulars of these tasty treats, and also has some cultural pieces you can read while you calmly and aristocratically sip on some Tsukimi green tea. Oh, that's real nice. Hey look, it's Princess Kaguya. I loved her in Naruto. Get a box for yourself or for a loved one. Or maybe get a box for yourself to get a loved one. You can sign up for a subscription by clicking the link in the description below and using my code. This does help the channel out, and I wouldn't have taken this sponsorship if I didn't actually like these snack boxes. But now back to the video. Released in 1996 by Studio Sunrise, a studio that always finds a way to include some mechas, even in a fantasy setting, Escaflowne is a true classic. A staunch reminder of what the Isekai genre could and used to be. It's not some vaguely Western European style fantasy with the same starting town and the same monsters and the same guilds and menus and classes and perks and XP. It's a real fake world, a setting that is refreshingly different and otherworldly, filled with diverse locations, peoples, and creatures. I mean, it's not completely original. It often draws from our own myths and legends, like the story of Atlantis. However, it does give its own spin to these tales, and given the fact that the planet Hitomi is taken to is actually right behind our moon, it almost makes sense that the two worlds would share some stories. But we're talking about this story, Hitomi's story, and what a story it is. This poor girl finds herself in a strange land in dark times. The Empire of Zybok, led by the mysterious Dorn Kirk, burns kingdoms to the ground with its superior technology and seemingly limitless resources. They wipe out the only people willing to help Hitomi figure out a way back home, so she's stuck with Van, the crown prince of a fallen kingdom, fighting a war she never wanted to be a part of. What's interesting though is that Hitomi does actually fight. Not so much in a shooty stabby kind of way, but she supports Van with her powers of women's intuition. Remember how I said she had a knack for fortune telling? Well, in this world, her fortune telling is on a whole new level. She can sense things that can't be seen and predict what's going to happen with 100% certainty. It's incredibly helpful, but it's also the greatest cause of pain for Hitomi. Some of the stuff she sees when she divines the future is not the kind of thing a 15-year-old girl should see. Hitomi is a shockingly well-written character. She's not annoying or useless or uninteresting. She's endearing, helpful, and strong in her own way. And most of the other characters are right up there with her in terms of how they're written. I wouldn't write any of them off. I mean, sure, most of them are based on your typical shoujo archetypes, but each of them is given depth and adequate time to actually have meaningful arcs. Well, I mean, the main ones at least. And I mean, yeah, the cat girl is a little annoying, but the other two, they make up for that. No, I'm not joking, actually. Like, they have some really interesting scenes. Sure, they're also, pretty, Look, that's not the point, okay? What I'm saying is that the relationships between all of these characters are believable and fleshed out. This might be one of the only shows I've seen where I don't mind the love triangles. There are countless little moments in this show that just do and say so much if you aren't too hung up on how the story gets handled. It can be confusing at times, not because it's hard to follow, it's more like, wait, we're doing what now? Without spoiling anything, I will say the second half of this show is a little rushed, and it makes some of the plot-related revelations feel like they kind of came out of nowhere. Or in other instances, it feels like we were supposed to get more time to develop other kingdoms or characters or what have you, but the show ran out of episodes, so here's the short version. If you know anything about Escaflowne, and specifically its production, then you probably expect me to talk about how the show was originally going to be 39 episodes, but got cut down to 26 due to budget constraints. This is something that's been repeated for, decades now, but it's not true. Well, I mean, it's not completely true. Escaflowne was pitched as a 39-episode series back in 1990, but that version never entered production. The script kept changing, as did the people involved in the project. Shoji Kawamori, the man behind Macross, nailed down the basic idea after returning from a trip to Nepal. His idea was simple. Let's do Macross again, but swap out the love songs for divining powers. Initially, Yasuhiro Imagawa, the guy responsible for the series' namesake, was going to direct this 39-episode series, but because of the mess that was going on behind the scenes, things got delayed, and he decided to do a Gundam. It wasn't until '94 that Akane Kazuki took over the director role, and decided to give his own opinion on what the story should be. This is why there are multiple versions of Escaflowne. And no, I'm not talking about the movie just yet, although we're gonna get to that. I'm talking about the first manga, which came out in 1994, a manga that is very different from the TV series. I'm not going to go into depth because, frankly, I don't even know who cares about this manga, but it's based on the original Escaflowne concept, which was more of a shonen-style story. Very straightforward and action-packed, but not that concerned with character relationships and romance. Akane wanted to do something else for the TV version. Instead of making the typical shonen mecha series, he went with something that's like half shonen, half shoujo. The fan service was largely removed, more pretty boys were added, and Hitomi was given a more active role in the story. Also, we got a lot of tarot card stuff because women love their witchcraft. Normally, I'd say such an attempt to appeal to a broader audience would be ill-advised. Guys and gals tend to like different things, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that a good story knows who it's for and who it is not for. Plus, when you try to appease everyone, you typically end up pissing off everyone instead. That or you just make slop everyone forgets about 2 weeks later. But Escaflowne somehow managed to beat the odds and become a show that has something for everyone. The fights are fantastic and plentiful, gruesome and gritty, but not gratuitous. It knows many of you want to see some action, and it delivers above and beyond. But it also knows that there doesn't need to be a fight every 5 minutes. We can spend some time in our leading lady's head, introduce new options, change up relationships, explore the difference between a surface-level infatuation and a true, pure love. This is both a strength for the show and a shortcoming. Emotionally, Escaflowne delivers some very powerful stuff. However, that comes at the cost of facts and logic. The show is no masterpiece. It's filled with flaws, many of which are not the result of the alleged episode cutting, but rather the ambition of the director. There's plenty of stuff in this show that could have been cut out completely and no one would have noticed, but they're still there, setting up things that the people involved should have realized they could never cover adequately. But these problems never stopped me from enjoying what I saw because Escaflowne is just so sincere. A little cheesy, sure, but it's never ashamed of what it is. And what I love most about this show is that what it is not just simple wish fulfillment. Modern isekai stories have this tendency to vilify life and the real world to the point where it's basically just telling people the best thing that could happen to you when you walk outside is getting hit by a bus. Hating life is cringe, we do not condone this message. Many people I know have grown to despise the whole isekai genre because of this problem. But it doesn't have to be like this. See, there's a difference between a temporary escape from the hardships of the world and full-on desertion from life. A good story about going to another world should not promote a desertion from reality. It should be a story about growing as a person through the most unlikely of circumstances and stumbling onto some fundamental truth either about the world or yourself. And most importantly, you have to make sure you don't get lost in the fantasy. Because if you never put down the book, then you're gonna miss out on the greatest story of all, your own. Escaflowne is this kind of isekai, and that is why I love it. But not every version. I mean, have you seen the Fox version? It's terrible.
Escaflowne premieres Saturday, August 19th at 10, only on Fox Kids.
Oh no!
This was during the 4Kids era, a golden time to be sure. However, 4Kids had nothing to do with Escaflowne. Now, the ones who butchered this show were none other than Saban Entertainment. And when I say butchered, I mean butchered.
Behind me!
They don't even show the first episode. Why do they skip the introduction? Well, apparently, it was too focused on Hitomi. You know, the main character. Plus, the show was chopped up to meet time slots and heavily censored to meet the TVY7 guidelines. Yeah, that's right, they turned Escaflowne into a kids show. Escaflowne is not a kids show. But by far the worst thing about the Fox version has got to be how they handled the music. Yes, we are finally going to talk about the music. I know you were just waiting for me to mention it. I apologize for all the edging. I am a creature of habit. Escaflowne's soundtrack is probably the best part of the entire experience. Yoko Kanno knows how to make some music, unlike the other Yoko. Highly atmospheric and filled with so many different types of songs that somehow never feel out of place and instead enhance everything that's happening on screen. I'd expect nothing less from the lady behind the sound of Cowboy Bebop. This is one of the best soundtracks in anime, period. And they removed it for the Fox version. This soundtrack just didn't appeal to a Western audience, apparently. You're telling me this version got canceled 10 episodes in? I'm shocked. Although to be fair now, the Fox opening is pretty catchy. There was another dub made later on, but I think this is a show you have to watch subbed. Now, you know me, alright? I like my English dubs. However, the Japanese cast is just too stacked to not watch it subbed. I mean, it's even got one of my absolute favorites, Joji Nakata, the voice of Joshua from the Bible anime. Escaflowne also marked the musical debut of Maya Sakamoto, one of the most talented VA of all time. She sings the opening along with a few insert songs and plays Hitomi perfectly. Probably because she was the same age as the character, it was a role that was basically made for her. Surprisingly though, Escaflowne wasn't that big of a hit in Japan. Not a flop by any metric, but certainly no Gundam. But see, elsewhere, Escaflowne was big, even outselling Gundam on VHS in the mid-90s, which is exactly why the suits at Sunrise greenlit another Escaflowne project. This one, a feature-length film released in 2000 that has a bit of a reputation. First, I need to establish that this movie was not a sequel, nor was it a condensed version of the TV series. It was a retelling of Escaflowne that kept most of the characters, but changed a lot of things. Now, if I were to list every single difference, we'd be here all day, so I'll just stick with the obvious stuff. Everything was redesigned. The characters, the creatures, the mechas, and even the world itself. The tone is much darker too than the original. Not that the original wasn't dark at times, but this one is filled with more of that early 2000s I hate my dad energy. It's also filled with more blood. Now, the TV series did have a fair amount of blood too, but it had to deal with TV censorship guidelines. The movie does not. But it's not just the visuals that are darker, it's the characterization too. Hitomi isn't a relatively average girl content with her time in high school. She's a loner who's already quit the track team and is currently contemplating quitting life. It's her feelings of loneliness which cause her to be taken to Gaia, where she's told she's this winged goddess who can summon the dragon armor Escaflowne to defeat the evil Black Dragon clan. Also, Van isn't the hot-headed warrior who still hesitates to strike at full power. He's now an angry king that stabs first and asks questions later. I could go on with the other characters, but I think you get the point. They're very different. Concerning the world of Gaia, well, it has a much stronger Japanese influence in the film compared to the TV series. What used to be a world that combined Eastern and Western fashions and governments and cultures is now a world that more closely emulates medieval Japan, but with magic. Oh yeah, there's magic now. I mean, there was always sort of magic before, but it wasn't like this. Can you see why so many people will tell you this movie sucks? It's very different from the TV series. So much so that it sometimes doesn't even feel like Escaflowne anymore. The complex characters with nuanced perspectives are simplified or completely omitted. Then there's the story, which is incredibly rushed and reduced to a basic revenge story with some romance slapped on top. Not to mention, a lot of this movie feels like a series of cameos stitched together. I'm saying some very harsh things here, but if nothing else, it's a very pretty movie. It's just a shame the amazing animation is not attached to something better. I think this movie could have been great if it were a trilogy instead of a single film. While there are many changes from the TV series that I don't like, there are many others that honestly, I'm all for. Stuff like Van's former subjects now fighting for the bad guys out of necessity, and Malerna traveling alongside Alan and his crew to fight the good fight from the get-go, even if she looks nothing like the character she's supposed to be. The new magic system seemed pretty interesting, and I think the movie has a better Dylan Dow simply because it doesn't dilute his psychotic presence with a pointless addition. If you know, you know. I'm a bit more torn on how the mechas are handled in this film. There's definitely more significance given to Escaflowne, which I like, but it's locked away for most of the runtime, which means we only ever get one proper mecha fight. And this doesn't bother me that much, but it still feels weird considering how common the mecha fights were in the series. Also, the mechas are now biological instead of steampunk. It's another change that I'm not sure if I like or not. I think it fits with what this movie was going for, but the steampunk stuff was more up my alley. Had this been 3 films instead of 1, I think it would have been good enough to justify these new ideas. But unfortunately, that's not what we got, so I can't sit here and praise the film for presenting cool ideas it didn't handle all that well. That all being said, I still think this movie is worth watching. Frankly, the visuals and soundtrack alone are just that good. But also, like I said, there are plenty of things exclusive to the film that are pretty great, even on their own. Now, is the film as good as the TV series? No, not even close, are you kidding me? But it's still pretty enjoyable as an action film. Now, if we were purely grading on animation, it's an easy 9 out of 10. But movies are more than just moving images, so it's not a 9 out of 10. I've seen some people say that you should actually watch the film first and then do the TV series, and that might not be a bad way to go about it. You could consider this film an introduction to a much grander story or something. I don't know, you can debate this in the comments. But now here's a harder question to answer. Where can I watch Escaflowne? See, the thing is, it's not on any streaming service, even Crunchyroll, despite Funimation having the rights. So, good luck with that. And until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Vult, and a big thank you to all the cultured.